There's this elephant in the room question that I have
Sure.
to ask you. How big of a pain in the ass was it to work with Doug all those years?
So lots of funny stories, but when I first interviewed him, he was right out of Procter & Gamble. And Richie George and some of his friends were in the mortgage business, and they said, you need to get in. So they went to the phone book and they rated the companies for Doug. A, you should interview. C, don't do any of them. They actually went into the phone book. And so he ended up interviewing with us.
The Coldwell Banker one.
And so, yeah. So he was very feisty.
There's two things that you know about this company. You know the origin story. You've probably heard it like 25 times. Very drawn out. And you know that this is who runs the company. This is the mama bear of this company. And so what I decided today was, I've never, and I've been associated with this company since 2008, I've never heard the origin story of the company from the person who was a part of this company since negative day one. So, and I would guess most of the audience also has not heard your story because you're always just kind of, pushed into the background while Mr. Shukar gets to tell the story.
Well, Doug's always been the face of the company, and he loves that. But I was at Countrywide, and three very good friends of Doug and mine, one being Dawn Baker, they were starting USA Mortgage in the mid-90s. And they got really pretty good traction down the road, and then they decided to take in venture capital money. And Doug and I started with the new company. He was February of 2000 and I was March in 2000. And around August, the venture capital guys went to Doug and said, we're not going to make it. And do you want to buy the company? And so I had always wanted to start my own, but never pulled the trigger. And so Doug looked at me and said, hey, you want to do this with me? And I said yes. And that's how it started. And we started with 50 people.
Wow.
And here we are today, still growing and going. And it's been fun. It's been a fun run. And, he only ever wanted one direct report. That was me. And he wanted nothing to do with the business side. Doug is a sales guy, and we all know that. And so he never really wanted any part of running the company or strategy or anything like that.
Okay, so let's back up.
Okay.
So we've heard the stories, Doug's stories, the Vanderbilt, the P&G, the Lone Surfer, if Linda gets hit by the slop truck, all these things, right? This is all, everybody knows exactly what I'm referencing. So I want to get your take. You just gave us a 30 million foot view, and you went from start to finish in a couple minutes, which is, I'm sure, people appreciate.
You read my emails.
That's also true. Also true. But so I want to hear it from your side of things. You hired Doug.
I did 35 years ago. He was 25.
What did you say, and what company was this?
It was Gordon Gundecker's mortgage company, RFSI.
What was your role?
I ran the mortgage company.
And so then, okay, let's rewind even further back than that. When did you get into the business?
52 years ago.
Wow. And where'd you start?
I started at a very, very small company. They did all kinds of loans, but it's not a mortgage company as you would know it. Mm-hmm. They did construction loans and just all kinds of different loans. But they took the time. I was there 8.5 years, and they took the time to really teach me about the business. I mean, how to read a title policy, how to cure the title policy. I mean, all the little details. I really learned a lot there.
Mm-hmm. So if you've been in the business for 52 years, that means you got into the business when you were 2 years old.
That's right.
So did you do something before mortgage?
No.
Really? So did you go to college?
I went to Springfield.
Really? Southwest Missouri State?
Uh-huh.
Really? And graduated with what degree?
Did not graduate.
Got a girl.
Mm-hmm.
Just partied your ass off? Got sent home?
Got married when I was 19.
Okay. Okay.
So.
That's what stopped the college?
Yep.
Really? Okay. What were you going to school for?
Home economics.
Home economics? What in the hell are you going to do with that?
Don't know.
like Martha Stewart type stuff? Is that where you're going?
I guess.
Awesome. Okay, that's cool. All right. And so you quit college to get married. When did you get into the mortgage business after doing that?
Well, Ronnie's dad.
So this is Ronnie's dad.
Ronnie's dad. We went. We were in college together, and we got married while he was in college, and so that's when I kind of pulled back. I started working. Became a doctor's assistant, so I can give you shots.
Gotcha.
And then after he graduated, we came back to St. Louis.
Okay.
I needed a job, and a girlfriend of mine, her mother was vice president of this very small lender. And that's how it started.
Wow. Fascinating.
Yep.
When you got into the business, do you remember thinking to yourself, this is going to be my forever career?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like the challenges. I like to learn. I mean, we're still learning today because it changes so often. But yeah, I knew that this is where I wanted to go, but I had not explored enough aspects of the company. So I went and became a vice president of Jefferson Gravois Bank. It's right there on the wedge of Jefferson and Gravois. I don't know what it is now. Okay. And I was their vice president of real estate, but I learned servicing. I called my own foreclosure sales. I was responsible for any properties that we did foreclose on to get rid of them. I had a teacher from Clayton High School and his brother who was an attorney, and they were the name of their company was the Bandito Brothers. And if I foreclosed on a property in Soulard or whatever, they'd come in my office, they'd have a sales contract, and they'd put down like 50 cents, and I would lend them the rehab money, and they bought the property and they'd rehab it, and they had all these different apartments. So it was fun.
Wow. Then this is back, if my math serves me.
Oh, it's way back.
This is late 70s, early 80s.
Right.
The industry had to be entirely different.
It was because Fannie and Freddie were just coming into being, so we didn't have a lot of that prior.
So it was all direct bank money.
Mm-hmm. It was all money, bank money, or lines if bank give you a line or something. But and it was it was not cutthroat. We partied with all the loan officers, all the title companies, and ever since licensing, it's just become mean and just so hard.
You think licensing has anything to do with that?
Oh, absolutely.
That was 2010.
Absolutely.
But let's keep before then.
Okay.
At what point? When do you feel like the industry really shifted?
Oh, I think licensing was...
Really, 2010. So you think before 2010, because before 2010 was also when the Wild Wild West occurred. Because I got in the business in 2000, and I feel like the Wild Wild West occurred shortly after, early 2000s. It wasn't immediate. So when you think of it from that perspective, because you clearly, I'm sure, remember those days
Oh, yeah.
of the wild, wild west. And
Oh,
if you've
yeah.
been in the business, you know what that means. When do you feel like that shift happened? Because it was almost like, they've now made movies about it. It's the Wolf of Wall Street type thing, and The Big Short. And those were all 2000s.
Mm-hmm.
Was there a point in the 80s or 90s when something shifted that created this almost greed?
Well, it became a lot easier to make a lot more money than in the past, especially for an LO. So in the early days, Doug and I would I can remember giving out these crystal bowls to the loan officer who had the most revenue on a loan.
Oh, most revenue. Wow.
Because we could.
Yeah.
And I can remember it was a gal, forget her name, 1 year, and she did a loan in Hawaii and made $34,000 on one loan.
Yeah.
And so it was that when you had just breathing loans, you could get a loan for anybody at any cost for any reason, yet we could still split the revenues. That's when it really took off.
Is that a technical term, just breathing loan?
Probably not.
But I know what you mean. I know what you mean. And then that was, so when do you feel like that shift happened? Was that early 2000s or was it before then?
No, probably the early 2000s.
Because it was wild until the crash.
It was.
And then things just came to a screeching halt.
Yes, and so it became much harder to employ a licensed loan officer. There was some that couldn't pass the test and then couldn't do this or background checks or whatever it was. And so suddenly other companies' loan officers became the real prize because they were already licensed. And so I think that's all of a sudden when it just got to be, loan officers couldn't make as much, and all the regs around it and the compliance, and all of a sudden your LOs are kind of your prized possession and you don't want them to go anywhere else. And it just took to where it just got to be extremely ugly.
Yeah. So what was for those that aren't too privy to the story, what would you say was the turning point year for the company? Because let's go back now to when you said you started the company. You started with 50 people. Where did these 50 people just fall off a truck? I mean, where did these people come from?
They were with the current company.
Oh, the company that you bought.
Yes, so we could interview all of them. I applaud Doug. There was 2 LOs, and we just didn't feel, they did a lot of business. In fact, they did 1/3 of our business. And we just felt like they didn't have the integrity and the values that we were going to set up for the company. And Doug let them go his first day.
Oh, gosh. The 1/3 of the business.
1/3 of the business.
Wow.
We just, I think we're just crazy believers. Our goal was the primary goal was to become #1 in St. Louis.
Really?
And after that happened, then we decided, well, let's just be #1 in Missouri. And then that happened. And then right before we did the whole ESOP thing, we started getting licensed in other states and seeing how that went, and it went really well. And we just continued to grow and grow and grow. But then we had 2020 and 21. That was artificial growth. Mm-hmm. And so now we're back down to that 2.5 billion, and we're just in another growth mode.
Yeah, almost like artificial downturn right now.
Yes,
is effectively what it is.
That's right.
Yeah, because nobody really knows what's going to come next. So, when you look back, what would you say what year would you say was like that year when you realized, this is going to happen, and it was St. Louis first? What year did you guys feel like, all right, the growth maybe was happening to where you thought, okay, this is going to happen?
Well, I'm trying to think back to the year that we were going along and we were getting some LOs. I forget what year.
I know '08 was when we joined, which was, I think we were the second branch.
Right. So we started, obviously the government just had their eye going to take the brokers out of business.
Yeah.
And so we did start to just see how many little brokers that we could get, other companies, and we were pretty successful in doing that. But before that, it was the year we hired the Rosenthal brothers. The Rosenthal brothers were about 41% of Paramont's business. And Doug used to take Tommy to school in the back of his car as they were growing up. And so when they came over here, just the two of them alone, the volume that they did, it really helped the growth, just those two. And then we started with all the branches.
So it was pre-branch then that you would say was the turning point.
Yes.
What about for Missouri? When do you feel like that?
I'm a little fuzzy on the Missouri thing.
My guess is it had to be not too long after '08.
It wasn't.
I felt like after we joined, there was just a windfall.
Yeah.
Lots of branches joined.
Because we had Wade.
That started it. Then it was us. Then it was just a bunch of other ones.
Right.
Some of them not here.
Quest.
Yep.
So yeah.
So as it has now progressed and we got to where we are today, and now the company made that shift back in 2018. How did you see that go down? So when Doug decided to do the ESOP thing, the way he tells it is Ron brought him this idea. They did some exploration. What's your side of that story?
Well, you're my side of that story.
That?
You guys left, and I was heartbroken, as you know, heartbroken about it. And but I do understand that Doug could not give you a succession plan, and that's what you guys were looking for. You wanted to know what's our future going to look like here, and I don't blame you for that at all. And so we talked to Gil. Doug wanted out.
Really?
Yes.
This is basically 16, 17.
Yes.
We were gone those 2 years.
Well, the ESOP started in the end of 17.
Okay, into 17, yeah.
And he was comfortable because he was personally liable for everything, personal guarantees on everything. He was comfortable at that 1.75 billion, around there. But he did not want to grow. We don't want to be a behemoth, but we love that 5 billion mark. It's just good for everybody. We keep the culture. We found it out. We had a taste of it. We made money. Everybody was happy. And so he didn't want to do that. And so we interviewed with Guild, Academy, who just sold to Guild.
Who's out of business now, basically.
Yeah. And the one thing that we realized is that the majority of our people who got us where we were would be let go. And, neither one of us living in this town, everybody knowing us, we could not face that. And so it was Ron. Ron, at that time, his region was doing about $500 million a year. That also concerned Doug and I that Ron might take out of here, start his own.
Sure.
And then, of course, I'd have to go with him.
Of course.
And so that was bothering Doug also. So Ron said...
Interesting leverage Ronnie had there.
And so Ron, Ron came and said, I think we should look at this ESOP thing. So that's what we did. And we put the ESOP together, and I I think everybody's happy about that we did it. I think, but as soon as I knew we were signing that paperwork, I was back after you and your guys
Yeah.
saying, hey, we got the succession plan, let's go. And so could not be happier that you're back. So anyway, that's how it came about.
So the way Doug always tells the story, it's really like he made all these decisions. How much of that is just a story, and how much of that was you saying, you know, maybe behind the scenes Doug was like, I like this guild option, maybe we should do this, but you're like, hell no, we're not letting these people go, or like how much of it was?
Oh, it was 80% Doug.
Okay.
He did not want anything to happen to these people.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Not at all.
So there's this elephant in the room question that I have
Sure.
to ask you. How big of a pain in the ass was it to work with Doug all those years?
So lots of funny stories, but when I first interviewed him, he was right out of Procter and Gamble. And Richie George and some of his friends were in the mortgage business, and they said, you need to get in. So they went to the phone book and they rated the companies for Doug. A, you should interview. C, don't do any of them. They actually went into the phone book. And so he ended up interviewing with us.
The Coldwell Banker one.
And so, yeah. So he was very feisty.
How old was he?
25.
Okay.
And had facial hair, you know, had the little goatee and the whole thing.
That was him then, huh? Yeah.
I guess. And but if you understand, when you meet somebody, they have the gift of it. He had it. Mm-hmm. But what he didn't know is that we were hiring him to go outside of the Gundecker company. And we had tried to grow the company, and we did. We were number 2 before Gordon sold. But we were trying to grow outside, Laura McCarthy and all these other, and all of our other loan officers had Gundecker offices. And even though we were so supportive, we were so involved with that organization, we still only got 30 to 35% of Gundecker.
That's
so
really
we said we
good.
got to go outside these walls.
Yeah.
And so, you know, the first couple of weeks we made Doug read the Fannie Mae manuals, and then we made him process 5 loans. And he will tell you one of the loans, and I don't know the name, was a famous hockey player. So he was so excited. He got to read a contract, and he got to call another famous hockey player because they were renting. And
Oh, wow, cool.
he loved the whole thing. And so then he finally said, okay, well, I'm ready to go out. And we go, good, you can have any office except Gundecker. And I will tell you, his work ethic and his plan, I can't remember exactly. I think he went to about 15 different offices every day, like X amount in the morning, X amount, and then X amount, and then X amount. He made his calls. And then back then I had, of course, more time. The company was smaller. So if there was an agent in the room, he would call me, and then he'd pretending that he was talking to a borrower. So everybody could hear him. I just put the phone down while he was talking. And then, you know, he would hang up. And he
did that while he was in real estate offices.
Uh-huh. Yeah, he did.
That's great.
And then once he started to get a following, he would, all at the same time, at the end of the month, everyone who closed a loan with him, he sent a balloon, a thank you balloon, and rosé to all of those agents. So he was always trying to defeat his competition anytime he could.
Yeah.
And so you come in and there's 10 balloons all over, and everybody's like, well, why did you get that? How did you? And then pretty soon he's getting more business.
Yeah.
And so he was our #1 loan officer within a very short amount of time.
So going back to when you told him that he wasn't going to get the Gundaker offices, how did he react to that?
Well, I think he was very surprised, but I think after we talked and I said, we're not going to grow if we can't get outside of this company. And so I think he thought about it, and he was up for the challenge.
Obviously,
Yeah.
made the most of it.
Yeah, he did.
It's fascinating the way you describe that, because what I preach now is attention is your #1 asset. And today, obviously, we're in a different time, but back then, that's exactly what he did. He brought attention to himself by making a phone call. He brought attention to himself by balloons. It was just a less innovative technological time, but it's fascinating that is tried and true. That has never changed. That's fascinating. I had to throw that segue in there.
Yeah.
So, all right, that's the young Dougie. How does it continue to go? I mean, there's got to be a pain in the ass story or 17,000 in there.
I don't know if there's a pain in the ass story. I mean, there are lots of stories because we've been together for so many years. But I would say for the most part, I think it took us about a year or so to kind of balance our roles here. But maybe that was him making sure I could do it. I don't know. But once we got into this pattern, I felt like it was like a great partnerships. Partnerships are really difficult. And I've told this to many, many people over the years, that partnerships, if you both aren't carrying the same amount of weight, it doesn't work. Yeah. And we've had so many partnerships, especially back then, with loan officers, and they just never worked because this guy, I'm not going to do, you got to be at the same energy level. And so what Doug did, Doug was the money. Doug was the finance, Doug was the personal guarantees, Doug was all of that, and then I ran the company. Yeah. And so it was definitely what I call weight. He definitely carried the weight. Yeah. I mean, I felt it was very level.
Yeah, but he'd probably say the same. He does say the same, because he couldn't have done it or didn't want to do it without you.
No, he did not.
How many times have you wanted to quit?
Oh, I have quit. I think the funniest story, if it was funny to the people, I guess, who were here in corporate, I decided I couldn't handle another minute. And I'll tell you why. Having the entire company report into one was a lot.
Yeah, overwhelming, I'm sure.
And so I just decided I was done. And so I had this artwork on my wall, and it was these huge paper clips all entwined. And I don't even know how I lifted it. I took that off the wall, and I put that art under and I stormed out of the office.
Awesome.
Didn't have a box to pack or anything. I just thought, I'm taking my artwork and I'm out of here.
Amazing.
And so
I wish somebody had cameras back then.
Oh my gosh, it was hilarious. And
when was this?
Oh gosh.
Roughly.
This was right before Dave Parks left.
Okay. So probably
I can't really
early
remember.
2010s maybe?
Yeah, well, right when he left. And so Dave said to Larry and to Doug, if she'll come back, I'll take HR. I mean, there was like 4 or 5 departments he was going to take.
Dave.
Yep. And so I was good with that, happy about that. I came back 2 weeks later, Dave gave notice.
Huh.
So I thought, I just, at that point, I thought I'm not backing out of this because then we got nobody.
Yeah.
You know, so.
So how long were you gone?
A month maybe.
No shit. I had no idea.
Yeah.
God, I was here and I didn't. Was that like kept?
Oh yeah.
secret?
Oh
Really?
yeah.
Wow.
Oh yeah. Because at the time, I think it's all switched to Ron right now. But at the time, there. So when the two Rosenthal brothers started, they said, "Well, we're not giving notice until you tell us when you're retiring." And so that's when 2020 came up. I mean, we just pulled it out of the air. And so I said 2020. And
At what time? When did you make this claim for 2020?
when we hired the Rosenthals, so that was like in the very beginning.
Oh shit! So like that was probably early 2000s or maybe
Yes,
even
and
late
so
90s.
so that's when we said 2020. Well, that seemed like a really long time away,
Sure.
and they were happy with
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
And so I think just being Doug and I, there were too many people attached to me, and even a few to this day. I think mostly now the sales guys and the RVPs are more attached to Ron, which is a good thing. But there was a very big concern that we were going to start losing a bunch of people.
And this was before the boom. Before.
Yeah.
Wow. So what was it actually that caused you to take your art and go home? Was there a certain incident?
No, I don't think that there was a certain.
just
I think it was.
overwhelmed.
I think it was just building, and I think everybody knows that I can handle a lot. Yeah. But it was just at one of those moments where I was done.
Yeah. That's crazy. That's it. And have you quit more than once?
Oh yeah.
That's just the most dramatic one.
Yeah.
Anything? Any other noteworthy story? I mean, no ripping artwork off walls.
No, it was. I mean, it's still at home.
Did you ever like MF Doug go on the way out?
I tried to choke him once,
Yes.
and he will tell you this
Yes.
story. This is at RFSI, and he was mouthing off, and I had enough, and I lunged over the desk, and he was cursing at me, and I was cursing at him, and Joe Bear, who worked with us at the time, was interviewing a couple, and to become his loan officers. And so he knocks on the door and he says, I'm trying to interview somebody. Could you two just... And so they started. But, oh yeah.
Wow. Incredible. That was a long time ago. That, man.
But
wow.
I can tell you,
Should be a fly on that wall.
But to get back, we were all out partying, and my girlfriends and I, and so we went to gas station, and we stole the teepee out of the restroom.
Okay.
And we went to Doug's house.
Oh, nice.
And we're throwing it all, but none of us are very tall. And so it was like all in the bushes. And so I'm standing there. I don't know that Doug's watching us.
Oh, great.
He's watching us, and he turns on the sprinkler. And I'm right there, and it's like, on my head. And so I got home, he calls me, and he goes, I knew it was you and all your little friends. You can't even get it up in the trees. So there's ways to get back at each other.
Okay, well, why did you have to steal the toilet paper? Why couldn't you just buy a roll?
I don't know. If you're drunk, you do whatever. I don't know.
What a classic story.
Yeah, it was really funny at the time.
And you were not with the company at the time, or you were?
Yeah.
Okay. So you were just messing with them.
Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah.
So you guys have been apart. You've done a lot together. You guys vacation together?
No.
Really?
Socially, we are not.
Interesting.
Yeah. Socially, we've kind of really kept that apart.
Was that a professional thing, or you think you just don't have things in common?
I think outside of work, we probably don't have a lot of things in common.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
So you...
Could be 15 years difference.
Yeah, probably.
He just turned 60, so.
Yeah. What, did you go to his wedding?
Oh, yeah.
Were you in the wedding?
No.
But of course you wouldn't choose that, or he
No.
wouldn't get to. That would be his
No.
wife.
Yep. Yeah, I was in the wedding. I mean, I went to the wedding. Yep.
That's where we're going to stop episode 1 of a 2-part series with Linda Pring. So if you liked that episode where Linda gives us her take on the history of the company and some incredible stories of her and Doug, in part 2 is going to be more about Linda and Ron, as well as Linda's predictions for the future and some very personal details about Linda that you may not have known. Stay tuned.